Good evening. This is Vegan Synergy Meditation number 10. I'm Dharmendra. And if you are here listening to this, we're going to go on a little journey right now to kind of tune into ourselves and let go of wherever it is we were before we came here and joined this proceeding. So let's just take a moment and kind of just enter the gap between your last experience and before we enter into this experience tonight. Let's just kind of rest in that space between the ending of all the things that we've been doing today and the beginning of what we're going to be participating in this evening. And as you do that, you can just maybe find yourself becoming aware of how you feel in your body, on the inside and on the outside. And if there's any sounds around you, just acknowledge whatever sounds are in the room. And if your eyes are closed, just whatever visuals you're getting with your eyes closed, so that you're just allowing all your senses to do what they do, and you can just take in any visual impressions if your eyes are open, and it's fine if they're open or closed. It just allows us to become more present and focused in the here and now and available for what's happening, just following the sound of my voice and the flow of information. So let's just take a moment today to take a look back through the timeline of today that we've just passed through. And just let your consciousness sort of comb through all the experiences of the day. And as you do so, if there's anything in there that needs your attention, or that wants your attention, or is grabbing your attention, or is diverting your attention, or is causing part of your attention to be somewhere other than here, it's time now to give that your total energy. So whatever that place is now gets all of your attention. And as you tune into that place, whether it's an event from the day or an experience you had with yourself, or an interaction, or an event, or some kind of circumstance you had to get through, whatever that is, just notice how you are as you're experiencing it. What's going on with you when you're experiencing that place that you're giving all your attention to right now, that wanted your attention anyway and wasn't going to let you get to be here and now present 100% fully until you gave it your attention. Because whenever we move into the here and now, there's always things that want our attention, especially from our mental repertoire of memories. So we're just going to do that. We're just going to give our total attention there right now. And we're just going to allow whatever that experience is now to assume the form of a great big drop, like a drop of water, and it's going to move through our head and down into our heart. So that experience is now going to become centered in our heart. And in addition to the attention we're giving it, we're also going to give it our presence with loving kindness. We're going to become totally in a state of caring about whatever it is that we've been giving our attention to from the memory of our mind, and whatever that memory left as imprints throughout our nervous system and our physical form is now in our heart. And then we're just going to let the ripples of our loving kindness just kind of ripple over it and through it and around it. So we're like embracing it and just giving it space to be and holding the grace for that place in ourselves. So we can truly complete that experience, because how many times in a day do we go through so many things in a day and so many things are left unfinished? And we tell ourselves, oh yeah, we'll finish that tomorrow or the next day. And 6 months down the road, it pops up again and we realize we just completely forgot about it. So tonight we're going to allow ourselves to give ourselves the attention we need at the end of the day, to allow anything in our energy field that's out of shape to just come back into natural harmony with who we are. And we do that by holding the grace and embracing it, giving it all our energy and our love. And then as we do that, whatever is left, the essence of it, the very innermost essence of it, is just going to slowly drop down into our being, into our belly, into our hara, into our center, where we just have whatever the pure essence of that is, the pure essence of that experience. And we're just going to allow that to expand outward into the space around us. And as we do so, the universe responds with an energy of the universal life force, a wisdom that comes in and touches us in our belly, where we just released the essence of that experience. And that's just a message that you can receive from the universal life force, energy, wisdom. And it can communicate to you in any way you're most needing of it right now. So it may not be a mental, verbal message. It could be in the form of an energy flow or anything. And you could just allow yourself to imagine where that emanation connects into the rest of life, and allows you to be connected to the rest of life in that way. And again, it doesn't have to be something that you understand mentally, but it's more important that it's something that you're just present with in your being and resting in and getting a reflection from everything around you. It kind of gives you a sign of your attunement with that place in your essence. Okay, so I think we are present here and now. And for those of you out there watching, this is just one example of what vegan synergy meditation is about, is accelerated collective evolution, where we take something of a vibration that we went through during our day, a kind of shadowy, sort of heavy issue that wouldn't quite let go of our attention because we really didn't give it all the attention it needed. And then as we drop it into our heart, the vibration, the frequency goes up, as I'm sure all of you experienced, as you start to experience the love rushing in, and you giving yourself the care you need in that place that was asking for your attention. And then in the final step, when we drop into our belly and we just kind of let it ripple out into the environment all around us, and just kind of patiently and silently wait for the reflection from the universe as to what that really is. And it may take some time to understand how to interpret that, but there's always a response from the universe when you release that and just let it go, like ripples out from you, like a stone being dropped in a pond and down into your being, and it just ripples out. And at that point, we get an even greater increase in frequency, although it tends to be a lot more subtle. So that does take some practice, but that's an example for everybody out there who may watch this video later. That's an example of what accelerated collective evolution is, which is kind of what the essence of vegan synergy meditation is about, and how it connects in with radical collective intelligence and vegan collective intelligence and other collective um, entities that are functioning through Vegan World 2026 and outside of Vegan World 2026 also. So I think we'll continue tonight with the theme we started last week of getting into not our own personal shadow, but more what we're starting to pick up and what is something that's really impacting us from our the collective experience we all share in the world around us. That is coming up as a result of being vegan and encountering life as a vegan and noticing, because from what my experience is of people who become vegan, that your awareness of what's going on in the world around you increases dramatically, because you start to see so many things that used to be part of your own behavior pattern that are all of a sudden no longer part of your behavior pattern, because you're not participating in a lot of the collective rituals that have to do with taking life and frying it up in a pan and eating it, to be quite frank. So as always, I'll start. I was privy to a live YouTube today. I won't mention names. I'll just say that it was a conversation between two very well-known figures, each in their own field. One that supports totally the vegan world and climate healing and is a respected authority in a lot of, as a scientist who's proven a lot of, pretty much proven through scientific facts, a lot of what he talks about. And he was having a conversation with a fellow who's proclaiming this thing called holistic land management. And I won't go into too much about that, but he is not vegan, and he totally supports animal agriculture and the killing of animals for food. And he's got a very elaborate, I would call it ideology that he's created to support that stance. And I was watching the two of them go on today, and what I was left with is this sense of probably one of the most powerful things I'm starting to see in relation to people who are not vegan and have kind of it appears to be kind of like a reaction or judgment towards those who are vegan, is this shadow inspired sense of being absolutely right, and that what they're about is right, and they're right, and that's just the way it is. And I realized that the only way a person could take another's life in order to feed their own life, even knowing full well they don't have to, that they could perfectly well survive. It's scientifically proven you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to take another's life, an animal's life, in order to survive. That you would have to feel right, because if you don't feel right, you can't justify your actions. And if you're right, then your actions are right. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you've proven to yourself and enough people out there that are willing to believe you that this is the right way to go about it, because of all the factors you've figured out that support that. And it just really hit me that is kind of a very subtle, I guess the word is hubris, just the sense of being full of oneself, and that whatever one's done in one's life, it being so much more extensive and comprehensive and all these things that allows you to say that, well, I basically experienced so much more life than everybody else here, that I have the right to be right in the face of all you guys, no matter what your positions are, because I just know better. And so to me, that's the shadow that I was experiencing today in this conversation, where the one guy had everything based on science and fact, and it was all very real, and it was vegan, and which is also very real. And the other didn't have any of that, except he just had his own assumptions and a very skillful way of putting people in a corner by pointing out um, irregularities in what they were saying, and then using that to jump on his own bandwagon when they're in that place to point out his own, what he sees as the right way to go about it. So it's kind of a very tricky, zigzaggy, manipulative kind of, but it appears on the surface because the whole thing was about creating a peaceful world and everybody getting along in harmony. But it all falls down when you realize a peaceful world does not include taking beings' life who you didn't even ask if you could, or if they even wanted to participate in that. You just did it because you could. That's not peaceful. That's anything but peaceful. And it's not like they were sick and dying and weak like animals in the wild. They always catch the weakest ones in the pack because, you know, they're probably going to be dying soon anyway. So that's how naturally animals hunt. But to go and take animals that are perfectly healthy just for your own taste. So it just smacked of a lot of inconsistencies. And I guess the biggest thing I would say, it was a very well-crafted lie. And so that is just, I just see that there's a lot of people out there who seem to have some authority in creating well-crafted lies to support the violence that they participate in and they propagate through their fancy ideologies and theories about things. None of which are most of which are not even haven't even been proven. They're not even haven't been proven out there in the scientific world. In fact, a lot of times they'll debunk and say, "Oh, technology, forget about technology," and who cares about the scientific method? It's overrated. And all these things that we know work to let us know if we're on the right track or not. And so a lot of times those kind of people, and this guy did, he also just poo-pooed all of that. So I guess in the end, what that left with me, because it did have an impact on me, is that the only thing I can see that's going to come out of it is this dividing line. And on one side are going to be vegans, and on the other side are going to be these, you know, devilishly and clever fellows who's, you know, who support, you know, horrible things being done to animals with their fancy theories and their unsubstantiated claims. So yeah, it just kind of left me going, huh, wow, just sort of a full stop, and realizing we have a lot of work to do to really get the message out there to people and get people deconditioned from the false claims of people who are out there with really well-crafted lies that support animal ag. So that's my shadow sharing of the collective. I will go on mute at this point. Hi, Melissa. Just caught us at a good early time. I just got through sharing my collective shadow. That theme we started last week, we're kind of going from there. I was just basically going through the YouTube, you know, Alan and Silesh thing and seeing all the shadows that were presented in that well-crafted lie we all listened to and how that impacted me. Anyway, so I'm on mute now. I've shared my collective shadow experience of the day.
Yeah, I'm just like to comment too that this is someone who, through his research, agreed to condemn 40,000 elephant lives, and only to discover after the slaughter that the earth did far worse after the slaughter or murder of these beings, sentient beings, than before when they were alive. Yeah. And I mean, like, really?
Yeah.
It's kind of common sense that the animals are in harmony with the environment and so are working the way God, creator, planned it to happen. And it's the little humans that are upsetting everything. Yeah. Not the elephants.
And I think that's kind of part of the hubris. I think you brought a hubris, didn't you, Dharmendra? Yeah, about how we as humankind sometimes claim to think we know better than nature, and I think, yeah, that is a pretty good large example of thinking that these what's going on by the hands of nature is not good for nature.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
That's it.
well, I would like to bring up, I had a really interesting experience yesterday involving, well, I kind of saw into it for the collective shadow experience that it was. And so there's a little bit of a story where I was walking home from work, and I was just trolling along, and there were two people behind me. There was a tall man and then an average heighted woman, and they were talking, kind of commiserating about their day. I could hear them kind of whining about a professor or a teacher or something. And I kind of noted how I was like, oh, it's nice to hear them bonding, but it's a bummer they have to bond over like just griping, and kind of like I could hear them talking bad about someone, but I was like, okay, whatever, it's okay. And I'm like walking along, kind of bumping into bushes and stuff, just like taking up my space on the sidewalk, because I like to do that. And I'm just enjoying my walk. And then I see a plastic bottle on the side of the street, just a tiny one, like this size. And like part of me is like lights up, and I'm like, oh, I could kick that. And so I kick it, and then I kick it one more time, and then I abandon it. And I'm like, okay, I exhausted that. And then I keep walking on. And I stopped at some point. There was a Safeway cart abandoned on the side of the street, and I was going to see what was in it because Safeway's on my walk home, and I was thinking I could just take it back. And I'm kind of like looking at this cart, and then I hear from behind me this guy go, "Are you going to keep kicking that?" And then I'm like, I kind of like forget, and then I'm like, oh, he's talking about the bottle, and then I'm like, haha, I hadn't made my mind up yet. And then because I was kind of just trying to brush the guy off because I felt a little uncomfortable. It was dark out, and but yeah, I just felt a little uncomfortable. And then he says, well, I was thinking of throwing it at your head. And then I turn around, and then this guy is just like winding up, and he throws the very water bottle that I was kicking at my head, and it just plunks into my ear, and it hurt more than I was anticipating, but less than would have been actually dangerous. And I'm standing on this weird stone bench thing, so I'm like about a foot raised off the ground, like, and I was standing like this as he hits me. And I'm just like, whoa, man, whoa. And then he's like, yeah, it's called fucking littering. And then I was like, that was there when I got there, dude. And then he's like, yeah, well, you kick it, you hit it, you own it. And then he just walks away with his lady, and leaving the water bottle there. And yeah, and then and then after that experience, I just sat down, and I didn't know what to do because there was part of me that I was like, oh, should I have done something more, like, to get back at him? And then I realized that no, like, just standing there with my arms open like this was probably like the best thing I could have done. And I kind of just sat down, and I started crying, actually, because I just felt this dude's wrath, and he really was so upset and just disenchanted by the world and the garbage everywhere, and he was taken out on me in this instance. And that was like really hard to kind of just take into my heart, and like I was just like asking the universe. I was like, please, like, let me forgive this guy. Don't let me not be compassionate in this instance over a stupid water bottle. And that was like really, that was pretty difficult for me at first, because it just felt like it was so emotional. And I just to realize that this is going on through a lot of people's heads, is they were walking around in a disenchanted world, and they're angry, and they're looking to see who is the perpetrator who is victimizing me. And it makes your world feel small. And I think that's what, and sometimes I forget that that's what a lot of people are contained in. They're kind of like trapped in this mindset that the world is a broken place that's beyond fixing. Because like in that instance, this man is upset about the litter. He's upset that I'm enjoying it, or I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I'm not letting it get me down that there's a water bottle on the side of the street. Like I picked up my fair share of water bottles. In this instance, I just kicked up a water bottle, but then after this, he still leaves it on the ground. And I feel like that just told me how disenchanted and disheartened this dude was, is that he can see that the litter is a problem, but then he feels like because he knows that the litter's wrong and he knows that he's right, that he has some sort of pass to still litter in that instance, because he hit me with it and he hit the water bottle too, and then he didn't take responsibility for either thing. I don't know, that was an act of violence. Yeah, it was just, that was a little hard for me to take on, but I feel like I learned a lot from the interaction. And I know when I got back to my apartment, I was thinking, I was like, this is a great example of collective shadow, and I can share this at the vegan synergy meditation tomorrow. And then I was thinking, like, I know that guy is not feeling as good about the interaction afterwards.
Yeah. Wow, Evan. Yeah, that definitely probably is the shadow of the day. For sure. No question about that. But yeah. I was going to, but I won't make too much light of it yet until we step into the gift. But I just thought, well, maybe it's time to sign up for some martial art classes. But I wouldn't do that if it's coming out of fear. So that's why I didn't say that, and I said it this way and contextually instead of actually saying it in context, because I don't want to influence you in that way. I mean, because if it's not coming from love, it's probably not a good thing to pursue. Because I always did martial arts because I loved it, not because I wanted to anything else. But so anyway, but I don't know if it happens to you more than once, then you may want to think about getting some kind of martial arts training. Just
I also just, if I could interject, like my Zen teacher, when I went to meditation, I was having problems with this renter. I had a mother-in-law and I was renting it to this woman, and she was really abusive and using my kindness, and I wanted to practice compassion, but she was taking advantage of my kindness. So I with my teacher, and I started talking about compassion with him and explained the situation, and I felt bad about setting boundaries and all this, and he said to me, "Have you ever heard of fierce compassion?" And I'm like, "Well, what's that?" And he goes, "Well, sometimes it means telling someone to fuck off."
Yeah.
So sort of like what you're saying.
I guess that's probably the thing that I felt like I was missing the most out of that interaction, that I almost felt like I dropped the ball on an instance to reflect back at this guy. Just, I don't know, something of what he was doing. Because I feel like in that instance, I was like, oh, I want him to know that I'm not the violent one, or something. Or that like I'm the innocent one, which I don't know. There's some sort of power in being able to demonstrate to your perpetrator that or in that instance, I wish I had have demonstrated somehow how like how unaffected the actual act was on me physically, and the whole, yeah, I don't know.
Evan, let's save that for the gift part, and then you can embrace it in your heart. Take that whole thing, and we'll see where it takes you. Because
Okay.
you know that works, and we'll just do that. We'll take whatever you got from that, and because that's why we bring the shadows out, so we can accelerate and transform them. So, but that's a really good layout. Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to mention something too that I've been that I wanted to kind of expand our sense of what shadows are, because it's not always just like with what happened to Evan. That's clearly a shadow that in the collective, because it came at him and attacked him in a violent way. So, but there's other subtler ones that have to do with when you things like avoiding stuff, or um, dividing stuff, or making stuff smaller or seem smaller or look smaller or over exaggerating. Anything that comes out of what I wanted to say about shadows is it's anytime that your basis of action or words or thought is coming out of fear. That's what shadows are based in. So they don't always have to be dramatically, they can be very subtle, you know, they can be things where you're maybe just saying, you know, you're seeing somebody that would just rather not deal with something, so they decide to avoid it or deny it or pretend like they're in a space beyond that, or they're better than people, like I saw today in the meeting. You know, there's lots of other ways that shadow can come out. So it's not just a direct assault or a heavy thing, or because I think most people tend to think of it as just this stone that's heavy and it's just dragging you down, and it doesn't really have, you know, it's hard to find the qualities in it, but there's a lot of different shapes and sizes and ways that a shadow can come about. But the bottom line is it's always motivated by fear, and a gift is always motivated by love. So that's why the acceleration happens when we play the vegan synergy meditation, um, because you have to come from a different place when you come from the gift. So really, if you boil it down to what I'm asking about in the shadow and what you went through in the day or the week or whenever, is where was the fear? Where did you encounter fear in yourself? And that can come out in really subtle ways, you know, and it can even look like the opposite sometimes. But a lot of times we'll extend kindness because we are afraid instead of because we want to extend kindness. So it's always, what is the motivation behind your action or your thought or your words? That'll let you know whether it's a shadow or not, because they can just be so subtle. They can really be so subtle. I mean, and it's so subtle that they can sneak in through your conditioning from your grandparents and your parents and your teachers as a voice that you admired, that you're imposing upon the present situation as a way to not feel uncomfortable about something or not have to face something, or, you know, whatever. And so those are just some more ways to become a little bit more sensitive to how a shadow might sneak into your aura. In this case, I'll say into your aura, since we're looking for the collective shadow and how it's impacting us and how we come into contact with it. So I'll just say that to maybe open it up a little bit, make it a little bigger palette of shadow to work with.
I'm finding it really hard to talk about shadow anymore because I'm so focused on the transformation of shadow back into love, whether it's myself or whether it's the collective. And so what I'm working on every day is more creating a space that is a space of love and light, where the shadow can be transformed, if you like, without me really doing too much more than preparing the terrain, if you like. And then when it does appear, I don't necessarily challenge it. Well, I do kind of challenge it, like in the dialoguing box today. I don't know if you read any of the comments, Dharmendra. But there was a lot of, I guess, opinionation, I would say. And when these polarities of opinion start happening, I just back out of the conversation. Like I'll address something. I'm not saying I'm right necessarily, but I'll address it from my belief perspective. But then if it starts getting opinionated and aggressive, I just back out because I don't want to give it energy. And so that kind of thinking about what Evan was saying, I think your reaction was the right one because you didn't feed energy into his aggressiveness. And so he'll lose power. He doesn't gain power from you that way. Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like what's happening is you're just becoming more perceptive and you're actually getting a more accurate bead on what a shadow is. The way you're describing the two shadows going at each other with their opinions in the meeting today, I mean, that's a really good example of observing one dynamic of how shadows manifest in the collective. Because the thing is that the more you grow in your gift, the more I mean, if you think about it like a sun, the stronger the sun is, the more shadow it's going to embrace. The bigger the solar system is, and the bigger the shadows are of the things it shines its light on. So I think the more that your gifts grow, and the more that you flower into what is your creative expression, the work itself is going to be looking for shadows to transform. Really, I mean, I believe that's the work of what angels do. They look for shadows because they're already in the light. They ain't looking for the light. They already are light. So they're looking for shadows. And so to me, that's the deepest work of all, is when you're embodying siddhas, you are, I mean, and I've had some experience of it myself, and I've been around other beings who've had and been a lot more deeply immersed in it. But when you're truly in a siddha, there is no more pain. There is no more shadow. And so even when you're deep in a shadow, you're seeing it as a phenomena unfolding before you with a unique pattern, identity, sequence of events, and whatever the pattern is and the design of its unfolding through you and in front of you. And you're really just looking at it from an innocent place. And even what would normally be called the pain values that you might have to go through while you're experiencing that are transformed into something completely different. It's almost as if the pain is neutralized, but it's because you're absolutely open to all of it, including the shadows. And because Melissa, you're so deeply I want to say experienced on the path and a lot of these deeper things, I just want to reflect to you something that I probably wouldn't say to somebody else if I didn't feel they had such a grounding in their art and stuff. But just one thing, I'll just make a question. Are you sure that when you come up with the shadow and say you're not really, what you're doing with it, are you sure that there's not a subtle shadow in that, in the way you're positioning yourself in relation to shadow work? Because in the next minute you did a very beautiful dissertation on shadow in the collective. So that tells me that you're really actually starting to study it in a way that's showing you the energy dynamics and stuff. And maybe on a personal level, there's something for you in that, because I would go all the way with you, but the difference being that if it was really true that you were all the way there, we would get that in you and your presence. You'd never have to say that. It would just be obvious. So in the saying of it, I feel you would like to get there and be in that place. And again, I'm only saying this to you because I feel you had the maturity to say this, because it's kind of an interesting thing to say, if you know what I mean. But I'll just put it in the form of a question, because I certainly don't know. That is just something I offer to you for your own exploration, if you're interested in that. Because you're just very intelligent and perceptive, and I think you're very sensitive to shadow and all that stuff. And maybe sometimes you just want to break from it or something, and maybe you've practiced a lot of being super open to it, and maybe sometimes it's just, it's like you'd rather just do something different for a while or whatever. My challenge to you is just open even more because as I was just describing, and I haven't had a ton of experience with it myself directly in terms of living it 24/7. I can access it if I choose to, but to go into a siddha and watch the transformation of all the pain that was embedded in your system through fear-oriented shadow conditioning, and how it transforms instantly into something else altogether. Just, energy dynamics. So I just wanted to share that with you because I feel this is a really open and honest space, and we
Yeah.
should, and if anything, because you guys have definitely done things like that and reflected things like that with me, so I want to make sure I give you the same in kind, because I think that's true respect. If I
Thank you.
can reflect back to you, yeah,
Yeah, that's
stuff
really
like that.
great feedback, and I'm really grateful for your open honesty with that. And I think it really helps all of us anyway, because we're exploring this territory. And and so I totally get what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. I do want to say though that my perspective is changing, very much conscious of that. So
Hmm.
I can, exactly what you're saying is I can see it at play really clearly now, and I'm not attached to it. And that's
Hmm.
a different perspective than when
Mm.
what I used to have. Is like I'd take a side, it's like
Ah,
fighting for that side and not booing on to that side.
Mm.
But now I'm just like witnessing and not attached.
the
And
gift of detachment. That's beautiful. That's a gift. That's one of the gifts. Detachment. That's beautiful. Oh, or I like witnessing better. I like that word better. But you could even say mindfulness too, because that's part of it. Um, so cool. I like what you say about your perspective changing. I could really see, as you were describing that, I saw that the tendency for us to get stuck in sides and opinions, just like, and that's definitely something that happens at a certain point, just dropping away, just melting away from you. And it's much more interesting to just watch the dynamics and see what happens. I think. I mean, that was the fun part of today's watching. It was just watching the dynamics, not so much who's right or wrong. It's just more about watching how it played out.
and also I think, Dharmendra, that if we suspend our disbelief or our opinion, and enter this more neutral witnessing zone, we can take truth away. There is truth in what everybody is saying.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so we can receive these gifts of what Alan is saying, of what Silesh is saying, or whomever, Jamin or you or whomever, by just pausing that opinion, and our attachment to taking a side, or even thinking, we can impose ourselves onto somebody while we're listening to them, so we don't really hear them. And I really opened myself up fully to hear fully. I wanted to really hear them and and take treasure out of what both conversations were gifting us. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, that's a nice description of what happens when we project. That's what projection is, and not projecting. Because when you project, you impose you've already set up the field for and the game's already over. You already have your winners and losers. It's no real contest. So you're just waiting for the side you're voting for to come up with all the things you've projected that is what is correct. And so that was a good description of some like what I was talking about at the beginning of the different ways shadows can manifest into our experience. Projection's a great one. That's a really great one to to do. So that was well described. So that also to me is useful, see, because that means that you're paying attention enough to the collective shadow to start to be able to illuminate what the dynamics of it are. Because a lot of times it's helpful to look at the way others carry on, because that sometimes that's easier. I mean, it's not always. A lot of times we do it with ourselves, but some of the shadows are easier to look at others first before we can understand their manifestations, you know, and what they bring up. So yeah, that was some good illuminating on shadow stuff there. That was a good way to do it too. I mean, that to me is just a kind of more like you said, detached, description of what you were observing about shadow stuff. That's kind of how I like like to hear it. That's a good way. I mean, there's the blow by blow, here's what happened to me, but there's also, I'm going to step back and share, you know. And even with you, Evan, even though you described something very personal to you, it was a collective experience because it involved more than just you. And there was a part of you that was watching it. Otherwise, you couldn't have described it to us and everything you went through. So that part of you that described it, that to me is like, I think on a subtle level, there was the siddha of valor in that, where you have to kind of get hit, but that's to test you, to see if you can hold your center. And even if later you had to release whatever was absorbed, the true test is in the moment, if you could just stay present with it and not get off. You didn't get off center. You just stayed with it. You absorbed it. You went, whoa. You commented on how that felt, and then later on you went and you did whatever you had to do. So that's really a good thing, because what will stick with you is that what happened in that experience, not what you thought about it later. What you're going to remember is what you did in the experience. And that's why I think, if I'm not mistaken, Melissa was saying that was well done. You did the right thing. I also agree, and for that reason.
Yeah, like reflecting back on it now, well, like because when this guy, he throws the water bottle at me, I'm just like standing there. And then through the rest of the interaction, I never moved from where I'm standing. And that was kind of like, I kind of felt frozen to the spot, but it kind of felt like it did feel really centered in the moment, where I was like, I'm not moving. Like, I kind of doubt this guy is like going to go from water bottle to fists if I just stand here. But that was a really weird feeling, to almost be like, here I am in the world, and the world is just passing me by, and then it just kind of reaches out and attacks me. But yeah, I'm really appreciating being able to kind of open it up and play around with this in the realm of shadows and gifts, because like just like 2 hours later, because I went home and I wrote down the whole experience, because I was like, I want to remember every detail, because I remember what I was thinking while I was walking up there too. I remember like my train of thought. And so I have like a nice little short story of it. And then afterwards, I started like laughing about it, because, and I just wished I was like, okay, now I get the joke. Like, what if I had gotten the joke in the moment? Because then it would have been so funny to just be standing there laughing. And I'm not sure if that's like a possible siddha state to be in.
Well, here's something I could share with you on that. You just hit a really good note that's very central to a lot of the Path of Awakening work throughout, I don't know how many lineages. The ones I'm most familiar with come from the East, although recently I've been more tuned into the Western stuff. But there's one practice where, and we do it when we do the transformation through the heart, when we bring the shadow into the heart and love it and transform it. But there's 3 stages to that when you do it with yourself. The first stage is you realize you lost your center after you lost your center. So at that point, it's too late, and you'll just have to wait until the body and your being finds that place in your center again. It's going to take a while after you get off center. You can't just force yourself back into center. You have to wait until you come back to center, whenever that is, because you'll know it, because it's until you get really good at it. That's how it is. The minute you go off center, depending on how much energy you went off center. Okay. Well, thank you for being honest, Patricia. We appreciate that. I like that. Very good. Wonderful. Okay. We'll see you next time. All right. So, and then at the second stage, you catch yourself at the moment you're falling. You catch it in the moment it's happening, that you're falling out of center. Okay, and you get better at it, because you start to realize in your life those areas and those places where you tend to fall out of center, and slowly you start to catch. But then there's so many different ways you can fall out of center, depending on where life is hitting you from. And then eventually you get to the point where you can catch it before you go off center. And so you just keep your center. So really, though, that's like at the shadow level, you've already fallen off center. So that's really where that practice begins. Where did I fall off center? That's where your shadow is. That's what's grabbed you and needs your attention because it's out of balance. It just wants to come back into balance. The body always wants to come back into balance. And then the gift is that truly the gift is to bring the love out right as you fall out of the center, and you catch it right in that moment, and you just let it fall into love, and then boom, you're just really, so you catch it right at the right moment, and you don't. And then when you get so good at it, you can see it coming, like in the form of a person or an event or something where normally, and you just say, I got to keep my center here. And that literally is when you begin to start working with the Siddha stuff. So that's kind of how that goes. So yeah, that's just something to become aware of. There's 3 stages: the after, the during, and the before. And that's a great way to measure how much you've really got this process, because you'll know, but by where you are in relation to your center and whether you fell out of it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that metric as a way of viewing it, because that's kind of how I've been. I had been intuitively like experiencing my spiritual path. It's like initially there was a big like falling off center that led me to be like, oh, I need some spiritual path in my life, and then it's like every now and then I lose it, and then it takes me a while to even realize that I lost it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the weird part. It's like 2 weeks will have gone by, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot to do these maintenance things.
Mm-hmm.
But that time kind of shortens like you were saying, and it reminds me of a talk I listened to where a guy explained the idea of like jokes and how sometimes you are in an interaction with someone and then you think of a really good comeback 3 hours later, and then you're just like, oh, I wish I had that 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
But he says how this is actually a really good sign that you even came up with something 3 hours later, and that if you stick with it, just in life, that gap slowly closes to where when like life happens to you, you're just so with it in the moment, and you're kind of on the ball to where something comes in. You're not overcome by. You're not overcome by it. You're kind of in the witnessing state. And in this case, it's comedy, which I thought kind of came into play last night in a weird way, which I took as a good sign. Like it was a sign for me. It's like, oh, I feel really here, because this guy said, he told me, he's like, yeah, if you kick it, you hit it, you own it. And I was just like, well, I guess you own me. And that's like the only other thing I said besides whoa. But I just thought that was funny, because I was like, yeah, that worked well with what he said, because he just hit me. And but then right after that, I had this feeling of like, oh man, like I thought of that now, not 3 hours later. It did make me feel amazing. Like I thought it was like, doesn't really make sense, but it still was like a sign for me that I just like felt there.
Can I just share a bit of light that keeps coming to me around your experience?
Yes, please.
Well, let's consciously shift into the gift level at this point then, because that's where I wanted to go now. I think we've all opened up enough of the shadow. So yeah, so go ahead with the intent that we're opening into the gift aspect now.
Okay, so what is coming to me is if we turn the thing around on its head and we say that person was a teacher, right? What was the lesson to be learned? So one of the things that comes to me is, instead of kicking the water bottle down the street, which is your right to do if you want, you always pick up water bottles. And there's something about that act, which I call an act of love, picking up litter rather than just kicking it down the street. And I'm not criticizing you at all. That brings people's vibration up rather than down. And So I witnessed that in Pacifica when Jamin and I started cleaning up the creek.
Mm.
And we waded in and we dredged out tons of plastic. And people would come up to us, including homeless people, saying, "Oh, that's awesome you're doing that. I picked up garbage out of the creek myself last week." And
Mm.
one person came up and said, "Oh, do you do this all the time? Can I come and join you?" And I could bring friends to come and join you. And so I'm just thinking about this vibration as we're waking up and
Mhm.
becoming more and more conscious beings, where we want to role model something rather than just kind of kicking the bottle down the street sort of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe that person can be seen as an awakener for you to act from this place of higher consciousness,
Yeah.
where you're role modeling something from love. I doubt that they throw the bottle at you. Well, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I just don't think that would be the response.
Hmm.
They kind of look at you and go, "Hey, look at what that guy's doing.
Yeah.
That's cool."
Well, and then because it's like, because it like in the instance last night, so it's like the guy would have, I mean, I'm guessing he would have just walked by the water bottle because that's what ended up happening.
Mhm.
But the fact that I like kicked the water bottle, it somehow rubbed in his face.
Hmm.
I don't know, like
Hmm.
like it seems to, like, because people walk by trash all day knowing it's not a good thing,
Mhm.
and I think we walk around the world seeing problems everywhere, and we know it's not a good thing.
Mhm.
But then if we see people kind of like playing in the problems, and maybe just like kicking up dust, that can sometimes upset us.
Mm.
Because I don't know. I definitely took away from that. I was like, I should just be more conscious about just in general the way I am in the world, but then also realize, like, it made me realize that it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. I can never expect people to know what I've been through, who I am, the time I've spent cleaning up garbage before.
Mhm.
Like this, there's like no,
Mhm.
I just can't expect that of people, and I certainly couldn't have expected it of this guy. And
Mhm.
so I think thinking of the situation as a teacher is really nice. And when I think of the phrase, like, when the student is ready, the master appears, it's like, guess I was ready. Guess I was ready for this dude.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would feel very honored if I were you, if I was able to at that point take that as a teaching, because that's a pretty radical teaching. But it is a correct. Not only is it a teaching about a teaching, but it's a correct teaching about a teaching. That because that is the way to take that. That's the only way you could possibly take that. Otherwise, it's not a gift. So there's even a double gift in there. There's the gift of the teaching of what happened, and she's giving you a gift by allowing you to support the seeing of it as a teaching.
Mhm.
So there's really two gifts in there altogether. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. That's a multiple gifting kind of thing. I think that's really cool.
Mm.
And then that can also kind of like compact around that experience, all this teaching energy, because that's literally how we work. We store things with other things depending on the impact we have. That's why when we do shadows and we embrace it with our gifts, it literally embeds itself around the shadow, a new gift. And then we open a siddha and that embeds itself around it. And that's how we're going to remember it the next time we access it. And we're not going to really access it through memory. We'll access it through going into experiences that bring up similar reaction response patterns in us in the future. And then when that reaction comes up, then there's also going to be a beautiful response around it. And then a deep learning around that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's how our aura works. It embeds things in different ways, but in a very, it's hard to even understand how that works because our aura is only so big, but it can literally enfold layers and layers and layers and infinite layers of experience into our aura in different ways. So that's when you start to discover those kind of secrets, almost like when pictures, how they embed the picture in the film. It's almost how our aura works. It just embeds it right in there. And because whatever the pattern is what attracts the frequency. If it's a beautiful pattern, like, I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures that this Japanese guy takes of molecules of water and what happens with different emotions
Uh-huh.
and how they look under different emotions. And it's the same thing that happens to our aura. It's the same. So If we can take, so if you can imagine a picture of fear that this guy takes, but it's a tiny little bit like that embraced by this huge bit of love, and what that molecule looks like, I mean, then you can start to, that's kind of how our auras work.
Mhm.
I mean, not exactly, it's more of a very dynamic, energetic process, but it's
Mhm.
kind of cool. So that was very beautiful. Did you need to I mean, you're kind of like taking it right into the moment, Melissa. Is there any, because you kind of just did a gift yourself and kind of did multiple gifts there. Is there any kind of gifting you wanted to do for your own work there, or was that it? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because that was kind of cool how you did all that. I was really thought it was pretty artful, which is also a gift.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, it seemed to weave in really well. I want to, and very beautiful. Thank you. I want to share something with you guys because I've been sharing more stuff in the docs and files of the. I want to make this bigger. Oh, I can't make it bigger. Okay, hang on.
That's lovely.
Yeah, this is the. You guys, well, you've seen a chart with all the numbers, right? That we use.
Mhm.
Let's see if I can bring that up right now. I guess I can't. I guess you can't bring up multiple shares. Maybe you can. Let's see. Let me try a trick here. I know to do that.
And Dharmendra, just to give you a little heads up, we
Yeah.
are using Jamin's computer,
Oh yeah.
and he just got back with
Uh-huh.
Nolan, and they're going to have to be taking this computer with them to the office to do the work they got to do for tomorrow.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We can end it anytime. I just, because I had a feeling tonight was going to be unusual, so I felt like I just want to go with it. However, however it works for us. So I just wanted to share some stuff with you guys because it's just because I had a feeling it felt like it was going to be an unusual evening because so many things went on today, and I didn't know if even anybody was going to show up tonight. It was the hit I got because I felt like the energy was very everywhere, all over the place. That's the thing about doing this kind of work. It just kind of puts so much energy into the field that, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Everybody's jumping more into their gifts, and things are starting to work, and connections are happening, and everything's starting to network and grow and expand and evolve. So whenever you guys got to go, hopefully I have a little bit of time here to share this with you guys. But if you see all the numbers here, these are the numbers of the siddhas
Yeah.
around the wheel. And if you start, let's see, January is January's like right over. Where's the 19? Oh, over here. So January's like right about here. The first January 1st, number 30.
List. You're on the list, right? We're seeing the list right now.
Oh, you are.
Mhm.
Oh. Okay, then hang on a sec.
I was looking over here. I was thinking. I was like, oh, it must be there.
Now he's got to be on the dial.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on. I'm gonna stop share and start share again because obviously I didn't realize it was changing for me, but not for you guys. Okay, here we go. So now you see the wheel?
No. Yeah.
Okay. So this right here is around January 1st, right here, number 38.
Okay.
And this has been around for about 5,000 years. This isn't even new. This is the I Ching as the Chinese have been doing it. Has a direct connection. You can see the astrological symbols. They're the exact correspondence to the astrological symbols too. So they also go around the wheel in the year. That's why everybody, whenever they're born, will have one of these hexagrams as their sign.
Oh yeah.
So it's in the big picture too. It's not just, and the reason we do shadows, gifts, and siddhas is because this is our body graph. This is the root chakra. They don't call it chakras, they call it centers. This is the sacral. This over here is the solar plexus, which is all about feeling. This is the spleen, which is all about awareness in the now. This is the heart, which can also be the ego. This is the G center, which is a very interesting center. There's the throat, the third eye, and the crown. So it's basically the 7 chakras plus a couple more.
Yeah.
And apparently this happened to us in 1781. And prior to that, we didn't have full access to all 64 of these hexagrams. Now we do. We're literally a reflection of the entire year of the zodiac through the I Ching in our bodies. Sorry, I'm coughing. I've been working on a bit of interesting stuff in my body lately. But anyway, so this, what it goes throughout the year, the big picture, the macrocosm is also reflected now inside of us. Because we're literally, according to this teaching, we're literally a transition species to a new form of human that is actually something we don't know about yet. We have no idea how that's going to work yet. It's supposedly coming in 2027.
Wow.
And it's going to be not the same as us. It's not going to have, whatever this means, it's not going to be the same meaning for the new form that's coming. So this is our form, and this is how it works for us. So I just wanted to share that with you guys so you could see this is where we're getting the siddhas.
That's mine.
Geez, the siddhas, the gifts, and the shadows is from this chart.
Awesome. It'd be really fun next time when we meet to kind of go into that and again in more detail. It's really fascinating.
Yeah,
What
I
I was-
really enjoyed the Gene Key website. I got a lot out of reading into mine and learning
Awesome.
about like what centers for me are like susceptible to shadow,
Mm,
or I'm not
Mm.
sure if that's,
mhm.
but for me, like one of
It
them,
could be. Could
yeah,
be.
for me it was like the heart. It's
Okay.
like that's where it was like susceptible to like impressions maybe, or, I don't know. But
Well, that's how you get impacted, is through impressions. There's 4 shadows in the heart: the shadow of pride, the shadow of agitation, the shadow of control, and the shadow of exhaustion.
Mm.
yeah.
Those are the 4 of the heart.
And I heard somewhere that exhaustion is a result of not doing things wholeheartedly. Isn't that great?
Well, the gift is resolve, so yeah, you can't have resolve if you're not wholehearted. That's for sure. Absolutely, that makes sense. That's totally true.
So
Yeah,
sorry, Dharmendra. So Jamin is going to need to take his
yeah,
computer.
perfect. So next time we get together, I think we can start to, because we do need to start to grow now and shift into more stuff. I think we've really got a good grounding now in the shadows, gifts, and the siddhas. Now I can start to explain the science behind it, and we can start to work with these things more and go into more detail and do more question and answer and experiential investigating and all kinds of things like that, which is really super fun. That's where we can start to take off and have fun with it. So wonderful to connect with you guys. This meeting is over,
Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
and until next time, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.